It is the height of bug season in the Boreal Forest. I'm on a 5-night expedition, and in this video I'm discussing 8 tips for how I tolerate mid-June mosquitoes. I hope that you might find one or more of these tips useful, and if you stick around to the end of the video, I've got a bonus 9th tip. The first tip is mind the weather. There are 3 weather-related variables that can help you predict and avoid mosquito swarms during the height of mosquito season: temperature, humidity, and wind. The first weather-related variable is temperature. Mosquitoes don't even hatch until there's 7 consecutive days of overnight lows of above 50 degrees. In fact, at 50 degrees, mosquitoes are entirely inactive. Mosquitoes at 60 degrees are sluggish. Mosquitoes don't achieve peak activity until 70 or 80 degrees. And they can't survive freezing temperatures. So if there's an overnight freeze, the mosquito hatch will die and needs to start all over again. The second weather-related variable affecting mosquito behavior is humidity, expressed as relative humidity, or the percentage of air that's saturated by water. At less than 20% relative humidity, mosquitoes can't operate at all. But there is no upper limit for mosquito behavior. As relative humidity increases, so does mosquito activity. The third weather-related variable that can help you predict and avoid mosquito swarms is wind. Mosquitoes can't tolerate windy conditions. Mosquitoes can't fly more than 4 miles per hour. This is the reason why when you're camping during the height of mosquito season, you want to find a campsite that has a place that is exposed to breeze from several directions. That might be the only place in your entire campsite where you can be completely free of mosquitoes. That is, as long as there is at least a breeze of 4 miles per hour. Understanding how these 3 weather-related variables affect mosquito behavior explains a lot. For example, it explains why mosquitoes are so active at dusk. Because after the sun goes behind the horizon, it's still 70 or 80 degrees, but at the same time, it's starting to cool down. And as the air temperature cools, the air's ability to shed water also decreases, thus increasing the relative humidity and making the environment more favorable for mosquitoes. At the same time, once dusk occurs, the wind dies almost to nothing, and the mosquitoes start to swarm. That's why in the summer, especially in June and July, I tend to go to bed pretty early. Once the sun goes behind the horizon, that tends to be about the time that I get in my tent and I start preparing for bed. The second tip for tolerating mosquitoes in canoe country is to avoid mosquito breeding grounds. Mosquitoes need shallow, stagnant water in order to reproduce. And of course, canoe country has a lot of shallow, stagnant water, which is one of the reasons why mosquitoes are so prevalent in this particular environment. However, you can still play the margins. And the way that you do that is you avoid camping in places that are next to deep, shallow bays, next to swampy areas, and in places where the soil is poorly drained. Now, one of the ways that you can know whether or not a place is poorly drained or not is to look at the kind of trees that are growing there. Pine trees, jack pines, red pines, white pines, they need relatively dry, well-drained soil. And therefore, wherever you find those, you'll find a place that is, relatively dry. And so the second tip for tolerating mosquitoes in canoe country is to avoid mosquito breeding grounds. Number 3, for tolerating mosquitoes in canoe country: avoid wearing deodorants, perfumes, and colognes. It is a common misconception that mosquitoes eat blood. Not the case. If there were only male mosquitoes, you'd never be bitten by a mosquito. Only the females suck our blood. And not because they're eating it, but because they need the protein in blood in order to reproduce. In fact, what mosquitoes eat is nectar. And they eat nectar derived from things like tree sap and things like flowers, which smell a lot like deodorants and perfumes. And if you make yourself smell like a flower or like nectar, then mosquitoes have an inborn ability to find you. And when they find you, of course, then the females bite you. So while it may be unappealing to some, the best thing to do is to avoid deodorants, perfumes, and cologne when you're in canoe country, especially during the peak of mosquito season. Tip number 4 for how to tolerate mosquitoes in the canoe country is to wear loose-fitting long pants and a long sleeve shirt. Mosquitoes bite us by using a part of their anatomy called a proboscis. They take that proboscis, insert it into our skin, release an anticoagulant, and then start vacuuming up blood. But the thing about the proboscis is that it's relatively fragile and it's only 2 millimeters long. And so if you're wearing loose-fitting clothing that covers your entire body, chances are mosquitoes won't be able to get through both your clothing and the gap between your clothing and your skin. And that is a surefire way to avoid mosquito bites over most of your body. And so tip number 4 for how to tolerate mosquitoes in the canoe country is to wear loose-fitting clothing covering your entire body, including a long sleeve shirt and long pants. I am now on day 4 of my 4-night, 5-day expedition into the boreal forest on the border between Minnesota and Ontario. And my 5th tip for tolerating mosquitoes in the canoe country is to wear light-colored clothing. Researchers have reliably demonstrated that mosquitoes prefer dark-colored clothing as opposed to light-colored clothing. At the same time, researchers have not been able to demonstrate an explanation for that preference. One explanation that has been offered, however, is that dark-colored clothing provides a better silhouette and therefore make it easier for mosquitoes to find their human target. My 6th tip for tolerating mosquitoes in canoe country is to get a good head net. The head net I'm wearing is manufactured by Outdoor Research. And what makes it so good are 2 features. One is that it's no-seam netting, which means that the tiny holes in this netting are small enough that even midges can't get through. The second thing that makes it particularly great is that it has this spring on it here, this little piece of aluminum that pushes the head net away from my face and away from the back of my neck. And so when you combine this Outdoor Research head net with a tightly woven ball cap or any kind of cap like the one I'm wearing, I prefer ball caps because it's easier to put the head net on and take it off. But when you have a hat that's tightly woven, you put this head net on, your face is utterly protected, which is very nice, especially when you're going across a portage on a humid, relatively cool day like today, and the mosquitoes and the black flies are both active. And so I'll put a link to the Outdoor Research head net in the description of this video because I really do believe that it is the best head net. I am on day 5 of a 4-night, 5-day expedition into canoe country in June, which is the height of mosquito season. In fact, it's the height of mosquito, midge, and black fly season. So it's the trifecta of biting insects right now. But I'm talking about mosquitoes, and my 7th tip for tolerating mosquitoes in canoe country is to safely wear DEET. DEET was invented by the United States military to protect soldiers fighting in the Pacific Theater in World War II against malaria. And it was made available to consumers in the 1950s. Now, a lot of people have expressed concerns about DEET's negative effect on human health. But the reality is that scientists have been measuring the influence of DEET on human health for almost 70 years. And it's not entirely healthy. They have provided 2 guidelines for using DEET in a safe way. The first one is Don't put a DEET solution containing greater than 30% DEET directly on your skin. DEET in concentrations of over 30% is for your clothing. That's what you put on like your hat, on your cuffs to your long sleeve shirt, on the cuffs to your long pants, on your socks, on your hat, on maybe a bandana that you tie around your neck. You know, that's not designed to go directly on your skin. What I use is I use a 3M DEET solution that contains 30% DEET that lasts for 12 hours under ideal conditions. And I find that that is extremely effective. So that's the first guideline, is don't put DEET solutions of greater than 30% directly on your skin. The second guideline is that DEET is inappropriate for children under the age of 2 years old. Bodies are still developing at the time, and researchers have found that it's negative. I haven't looked into exactly what DEET causes when it does have negative effects, but I know that even under the worst circumstances, the risk is still really small. But if you want to really protect yourself against the negative effects of DEET, those are the two guidelines that you really need to follow. And my 8th tip for tolerating mosquitoes in the canoe country is to stay calm. Stay calm. Mosquitoes are attracted to our carbon dioxide, and so if you become anxious and you become stressed out and and your heart rate increases and your respiration rate increases, you're expelling more CO2, and expelling that CO2 is attracting more mosquitoes. And so the irony is that as you panic about the mosquitoes, more of them are attracted to you. The other thing about getting stressed out is that your body is going to release a lot of biochemicals that are associated with your stress response, and the mosquitoes are attuned to that, and that will be another reason why they are attracted to you, is because they'll be attracted to that cortisol and those stress chemicals. That's the reason why people who hate mosquitoes and who get stressed out the most about them also seem to be the people with the biggest clouds of mosquitoes hanging around them. But you know what? If you follow the other 7 tips for tolerating mosquitoes in the canoe country, you have every reason to be calm. You can completely shut off your body from the mosquitoes. If you're wearing long sleeve shirt, wearing long pants, if you're covering your feet, if you've got a head net, if you're using DEET on any minor exposed portions of your body, then it doesn't matter how many mosquitoes are swarming you at any particular moment, they won't be able to get through and bite you, or very few will. However, you know, if you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt and you're trying to stay up after dusk and you're not wearing DEET and you don't have a head net, then, you know, the mosquitoes are going to swarm you and they're going to be biting you. That is, they're going to be sticking their little proboscis into your body, and it is going to cause you to panic, as it should, because it's panic inducing, it's painful. So, but like I say, if you follow the other 7 tips, you'll have every reason to stay calm. Now, I promised you, if you stayed to the 8th tip, I would give you a bonus tip, and it's permethrin. You can buy it in a spray form. A company called Sawyer makes it, and you can spray it on your clothes, and your clothes will then become resistant to not just mosquitoes, but also ticks and black flies and midgets. And it has no harmful human health effects if you follow the directions. And so I've started using permethrin on my outfits that I take into the outdoors, and man, it makes a huge difference. It's particularly great for ticks because ticks get on your clothes and then they hang around there until you go into your tent. But with permethrin treated clothing, ticks will not, they will not latch onto your clothes. And you can avoid a lot of tick problems, which is a serious issue if you're doing a lot of portaging on rivers where there's a lot of grasses, because that's tick habitat, but also mosquitoes. And so that helps so much, is to treat your clothes with permethrin.